we start to transform an ordinary mask into something amazing and unique, you need to know two things. Firstly, because we're not starting from scratch, if you decide to do this, you wouldn't be able to claim any artistic credit because you're taking a mask that already exists, made by another company or factory or somebody else, and all you're doing is changing it a little. If you just want to make something for a friend or you're making it for yourself and you want to save a lot of money, this is a good way to do it. Secondly, everything in the video that I'm going to use, all the materials, do not have any animal products. So they're all faux materials, faux fur, faux leather, faux everything. So animal friendly. Let's get started. Tools I'll be using today will be really simple, easy tools. Things that you don't need a skilled hand for. Things like glue and markers instead of really complicated things. When it comes to accessories, it could be anything from adding some faux fur like this, better eyes, some bigger teeth. The place to find things like this is usually online. How much money do you really save? This is a quick price comparison. So first I'm going to show you custom-made masks already made. They typically go around $500 as your cheapest starting point for something that looks realistic and good, to well over $1,000. Again, that's, already made. Here's just the base alone, and that is $150. That 2knee foam base instead of a resin base, just that is $117, and that's not, nearly as detailed. The factory-made version, these are only $54, so that's versus $550 or well over $1,000. No, they're not as nice. They're the bare minimum. Some of them are a lot worse than others in terms of how much work you'd have to do. They call this a wolf. To me, it looks like a very deformed husky. But you'd be surprised at just how much you could fix with just different markings. And a lot of people use an airbrush, but let's face it, most of us aren't talented enough to do something like an airbrush. You can get the same thing, pretty much the same thing accomplished with just some markers. This has got tiny, teeny, ridiculously small teeth, so I would have to change the teeth out. But the good news is you don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on a whole jaw set. All you'd have to do is get individual teeth, and that's actually better because a lot of people make jaw sets that won't fit other masks, so you almost want to get the individual teeth. The eyes, they're not too bad, but really good eyes are not expensive at all. A pair of eyes, goes anywhere from about $2 to $10, and those are just so much better, so much more expressive and realistic. For something that cheap, it would be worth getting. And some of these aren't half bad. I mean, they're not perfect, but that one, the tiger, is actually not that bad. I think on this one, I'd just leave the teeth. I may add some upper teeth, but maybe change the eyes, maybe add some accessories. But let's face it, it's not ever going to be as good as something like that. You're not going to be able to, you're probably not going to be able to, unless you're a genius, transform it into something that amazing. You're also never going to, with all the work it could possibly do, rack up that much cost. So, at most, on the expensive side, if you went the most expensive route fixing up a mask like this, $200 versus $2,000, a lot cheaper. On the least expensive, you're looking at, a little under $100, maybe $60, $70. The bad thing about bases is that most of these don't come put together. If they do come put together, I've found personally that it's still incredibly difficult to get it to stay on and fit to your head properly. And these mass production, factory-made masks, they're made to fit almost anybody's head. That's the good thing. You don't have to worry about, not nearly as much, about trying to put it together and fit your head. You also don't have to do nearly as much work putting it together. The fur is already on there. Everything's already on there. If you're just Then we get into the accessories. Things like horns and stuff can really make it look unique. These horns go usually anywhere from like $15 to well over $100. So it just depends. A lot of artists know that you may not necessarily want it as a headband and you may be adding it to a mask or to an OEC doll, and they actually have an option to have it have no headband and it just be the horns. I think I'm going to get these two. The tiger and the one that they're calling a wolf. And sadly, that's actually the closest thing to a wolf that I can find in that factory-made version. And the look I'm going to be going for is a little less cute and a little more fantasy slash or horror, scary. I think I'm going to make the wolf really scary, and then I'm going to make the tiger more fantasy. These are the masks I just took out of the box. I did get the version that was on sale. I noticed that there were the same exact thing, slightly more expensive, wasn't on sale, and I figured, it didn't really specifically say, but I figured that these are probably factory rejects that just have something slightly wrong with them. The only thing that I saw on the tiger was a tiny little bit so far of sort of matted fur. What they call wolf, what I call husky, had a lot of matted fur and a little bit of a loose upper jaw that I've already taken out because I'm not going to use that anyway. I'm going to use different teeth. So yeah, I could have gotten a little bit better for a little more money, but I'm going to be fixing it up anyway, so, you know, that doesn't really bother me as long as it wears good. I don't really care. I mean, why not? Dark, so it's hard to see, but it shows up okay. So this is the wolf so far. Most of this stuff takes two hands, and I don't have a good way, sadly, to prop the camera up, so I'm having to, you know, take footage with one hand and craft with the other, and most of it takes two hands to craft with, so unfortunately that doesn't leave much, you know, in progress footage, but I'm going to explain what I did. So I swapped out the green eyes for some light gray eyes, and I put in different teeth, and I added a mane because it, you know, didn't have a mane. The head was totally wrong shape, so you know, that right there was all non-existent, and it just looked like a dog head, so I had to do something about that. And so those three things I put in with just regular old hot glue: the teeth, the eyes, and the mane. And those are actually the same ears. All I did was trim them with some scissors, trim the fur so that, you know, we had some, like real ears are, some really thin fur on the inside and some really long fur, long tufts, you know, and that alone made it the right shape. And then I, with permanent marker, I just shaded the ears, and I made the wolf a different color. And yes, I did decide that apparently the bloody teeth weren't enough, so I decided to go ahead and make his whole muzzle bloody. Most people probably wouldn't do that, but, you know, I wanted him scary, so all that's left on this one is the horns. Instead of trying to glue the horns directly on top and then maybe add fur around it, this fur is actually loose, and it's not, like, cemented down to the base. So if we just make a couple little slits, and then that'll give the horn something more solid to anchor onto when we glue it. This is the tiger so far. Obviously gave it different eyes and a little bit more shading, markings on the stripes. I also gave it a little miniature mane because it looked like it had this huge old head and tiny neck without that, and tigers do have a little bit of a small mane, so it just made sense to put that on there. I colored the nose black. Again, all of the coloring is used with just regular old permanent marker because it was a weird colored pink. It wasn't a pink color of a nose, in my opinion. and it just didn't look right. So the tiger still needs its upper teeth. I am going to leave the lower teeth, and then we're also going to give it some little horns. I actually tried on these masks to see, how they fit. Very comfortable mask, very easy to, the wolf especially, very easy to see out of. The wolf, to me, is the most comfortable one. The tiger is a little less comfortable. It's a little tighter fit, and you can see your face more when the jaw opens, but it's got a better moving jaw on it than the wolf does. This is definitely not one of those high-tech moving jaws. It's the bare minimum, and if that's important to you, you probably wouldn't be happy with this, but for me, I was just getting it for a whole head mask. I did make a lot of mistakes on these, and I expected that because I'm not a specialist, I'm not an expert, I'm just winging it. I don't really know that much. So that's what you trade for, doing what I'm doing instead of paying an artist who really knows what they're doing. If you haven't guessed by now, I have a very particular and strange vision for what I want. Things that no one would ever probably want, but I wanted. I'm not going to find that in a factory-made mask. No one's going to put blood on the fur like that. No one's going to put 2 different color eyes, because you can see the teeth a lot better like that without any thing. So I'm going to leave it like that. He has enough on his muzzle. It just blended in too much and they looked shorter than they actually were. Finally done with the tiger. See what it looks like on. Finally got the horns in the mount. It was about a month's wait, but it was definitely worth it. See what it looks like on.